Welcome everyone back to another episode of Pommy in Oz, and today I'm joined by someone that has an area of expertise that I think we all think we know stuff about, but we actually know nothing about. I've got a gentleman that has over nearly 30 years of experience in what he's talking about, so this is probably the first time I get to shut up and be educated in front of everyone, but I've got the great man himself, Nick Power from Nick Power Fitness. Welcome to the show, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thanks, Pommy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, mate, it's my pleasure. We've talked off camera before and stuff, and I know this is your area of expertise. So I think, firstly, how did you get into the realm of fitness? What attracted you to that?
Yeah, it's funny when you think back, on your life and how it's sort of come about to where it is now. Look, I started off as a junior golfer. We used to look at, golf was just basically a skill-based sort of sport, and there was no sort of fitness or anything like that attached to it. I can still remember seeing, someone stretching on a tee for the first time, and we all looked at him and said, "What the hell are you doing?" From there, I sort of I had a bit of an interest. I started just getting a little bit fit myself, and I'd never played football before, so I went and played some football at just at a local club in Geelong here, and I sort of from there I studied a phys ed degree as well at the time, so I was kind of learning about it. But the whole industry of what you'd call fitness, it just didn't exist, at all, and that was and that's where it kind of started a little bit organically to a large degree. Like the first thing that I can ever remember having to do was you had to learn to teach people how to swim as a part of your teaching degree. And so I did my swim, and I started teaching people swimming, and people just started asking me for private lessons. And so whether there was something that I was just, naturally kind of drawn toward teaching or helping or whatnot, perhaps that was it, I don't know. But by the end of my uni days, I'd basically had 45 sort of pretty regular steady appointments, and they're 1 hour, so I was fairly busy going straight into it, and it's just been unbelievable to see sort of what's happened in the world of fitness, from 25, 28 years ago or something like that. So I could never have imagined that it would end up turning into what it is today. But that's how it kind of started, and as a result of that, I just sort of I just enjoyed it, and I just stayed in it, and I didn't really want to do anything else. So look, that's pretty much where it was. But in terms of being a talented sports person or anything, it was more I always loved the sort of the coaching side of it a bit more.
It's amazing you mentioned golf because, obviously I'm 38 and I kind of am old enough to be of the generation that my heroes growing up, Ian Woosnam, Nick Faldo, they just looked normal men. They had the little bit of the beer belly. Their warm up was 4 darts on the first tee, and then suddenly Tiger Woods came, who had 6 packs and abs and biceps, and talked about nutrition, and it was a real confusing time. So golf was probably the last sport to become athletic. It was more. I remember being 18 and chatting girls up and saying I was a professional golfer, and them looking me up and down and going, "You're too thin."
It's really funny. Like when I look back on golf, and you watch the really good players weren't as unfit as you probably as the perception was. People forget that Jack Nicklaus in the late 50s, early 60s, his nickname was Ohio Fats, but by the time he started winning majors, I think he'd lost something like 25 kilo into the early 70s, and he'd actually really thinned out. Then you had guys like Gary Player and Ben Hogan. They were all pretty lithe and lean, and then the one that I can always remember being, Faldo was an ex-cyclist as well, and I think he was one of the he just didn't probably speak about, or there weren't the platforms to speak about what you did. outside of the game of golf, but he was always a pretty fit guy. And Greg Norman, he was always an incredibly fit athlete as well. Woods kind of was probably one of the first ones to really document kind of what he was doing and let the world know. And maybe that was with the advent of, the platforms and things like that, and the media attention on him and the growing game and all of those sort of things. Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, people like, when I look back at, say Woosnam in 91 at the Masters, or, even Craig Parry was considered this kind of overweight golfer. You look back now and he was, he certainly wasn't Patrick Cripps by any stretch, but he was, but he wasn't this kind of overweight golf. But I think the biggest perception came from the social game, which was tended to be played by, kind of men who, it resigned to the fact that golf was going to be their sport. But at the high level, there are always, and there's always exceptions to rules, and that's something that is really important to think of with the body. Is like the exception to the rules is someone like John Daly, and John Daly come along and he was just had talent to burn, and and people always say, power's resulted, strength and power in the gym and core strength and all this with hitting a golf ball a long way. Well, John Daly just completely disproves that theory, because I don't think he's ever lifted anything other than to pick up a cigarette or a bottle of beer or something. But and that's why there's just you just try not to make too many rules with. Particularly when you're dealing with biology, there's always points for and against, so.
No, I agree. And like you mentioned there, like the elite sport, like I'm in a fortunate position that I was quite fit as a kid, and then I went into golf, and like I say, there was all this onus on fitness. What, in your opinion, you've worked with sportsmen and you've worked with normal people on the street, would you say is the difference between being fit walking down the street, but then being elite level fitness? Like, that's a different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah. So the biggest thing, the number one thing is, I always explain it to people like, perhaps like driving a car. If you drive a Mazda or a Toyota, and you drive around a corner at 60k an hour, all cars can do that, including a Formula One car. Once you start getting to 80 kilometres, 100, 120, 200, by the time you're starting to get 300k an hour around a corner, you need a full team of mechanics. You need someone changing your tyres over. There's just so much more that goes into it. So what you're always trying to encourage, or I'm certainly trying to encourage people to do, is to kind of find their level of fitness that's manageable, and find what you can do, rather than what you can't do. For someone that works, someone might be in a high stress position working 50, 60 hours a week, and if they can get in 2 sort of good quality sessions a week, that's just, that almost manages their stress, saves their, just really, enables them to sort of, maintain, a healthy lifestyle, just doing something like that. But once you start getting into things like sport, if you look at, say, local level football versus AFL football, local level football, they've got 2 nights a week where they're trying to get as much into the players as they can, bit of tackling, bit of lane work, bit of this, bit of game simulation. By the time you get to the pointy end, you're doing, tackling's its own session, ball skills are its own session. A team meeting about the opposition might go for 2 hours. It's and that's the difference. It's just finding where you're at and finding what you can do, and being able to make it manageable rather than kind of stressful. When people start, particularly sort of people who are busy, they might say, "Oh, how often should I be doing it? 5 times a week?" Or, I'll give up smoking, it's just too much at once. Just start with something that's, a couple of times a week, and then you're better off adding to it as it gets a little bit more easier, or you're feeling a little bit more comfortable about it. But certainly just finding what it is for you, where your kind of sweet spot is really important, I think. Yeah,
mate, I love that. And I know you've worked with a fan favourite, Alex Chincotta, as
Yeah,
we colloquially call him, Pomcotter. And I
that's
remember
right.
him saying in one of the interviews about doubling your body weight, being able to
Yeah,
lift it, how you noticed that was so important in today's game. Now, I speak to a lot of the juniors, and there is this tendency in junior football that they kind of, instead of having biodiversity, they kind of pigeonhole every footballer. You're kind of like Cripps, so we want you
yeah,
to be big and strong. You're
yeah.
kind of like Kerno, so we want you to be quick. How you just mentioned finding what you're good at and working on it. Do you feel like that is probably the biggest misconception in
Uh,
sport, that because you're 6'8", you've got to be Cripps?
yeah, what people forget all the time, and I can remember having this conversation with Alex a long time ago now about, there was always, and particularly in that late 2015 to 20 era when Dusty was sort of starting to become prominent, there was this real sort of trend toward, they called it the midfield bull, and
Yeah.
everyone wanted this big heavy guy in the midfield that was strong. But what they forget, and what kids were forgetting at the time, was that the other one that was really prominent, I'll just throw in another name, was Nat Fife. And so I can remember showing a picture of Nat Fife to Alex and saying, look at Fife now. And we drew up a picture, and people forget what he looked like at 18. He was, he'd taken a long time to build that sort of, that level of strength and development into his muscles and to his game. But it's that kind of overnight sensation thing, where people think it just magically appears. And one of the dangers of that was kids sort of, they see these guys and they're getting into the gym and thinking that they need to, be this level of strength straight away. And what they need to do is just get a really sound base and build it over kind of 3 or 4 years. And that's where you start to really see, really good development and growth, is when people get, they're following a really good program for a few years. But there's always been this thing, and particularly in this day and age, for just immediacy of results, and immediacy of, I've got to be this person right now. And in the body, if you try and cheat the body in any way, it puts you right back to where you need to be, either through sickness or injury, or if you get 4 weeks ahead of yourself with trying to do too much running, it'll just go, there you go, have 3 weeks off. And and that's how it is. It's just, you just can't beat the system, unfortunately. It's just hard work.
It's true. You really hit something home there, because we talked about Tiger Woods at the start of the program. I remember everyone at uni being obsessed with back muscles, because that was Tiger's big thing,
Yeah,
that he worked the back and it helped him crunch the ball. And
yeah,
I'll be honest, I've never been the greatest trainer, so I was just like, I'll just hit the ball harder. But
yeah,
the amount of people that I know now, I grew up with, who do have back problems now, who
yeah,
struggle to swing the golf club because they overworked it without
yeah,
thinking about, Tiger built the core first and then worked his way out. He didn't do it at
yeah.
12 years old.
No,
It's fascinating.
yeah, he was actually, like, he was doing it from about 3 or 4 years of age, Tiger. And he certainly turned into he obviously had a very regimented ability to have this very, very single-minded focus as to being the greatest ever, probably from 3 or 4 years of age. And they're kind of one of those generational people that come along, and he's really turned into that. That's when he started doing that, golfers started getting into the gym. One of these things about starting at the gym is, with particularly with an athlete, your body is your tool, and you've got to protect it. And so it's sort of one of those things where guys just go, well, I'll just get a program off the web or whatever. I'll look up a few exercises that golfers do. But these guys have been doing things for a long, long period of time. They've got really good sequencing going. The other thing they're doing is, he's hitting thousands of balls. But the one that really frustrated me over the past probably a few years is I can remember when DeChambeau, he went on this massively sort of, bulk program, and he was drinking the protein shakes mid-round, and, he was sort of training a certain way, and all the power and all of this sort of stuff. And, you started going down to the range and hitting golf balls, and you're seeing kids drinking protein. And I used to think to myself, golf's a sport of concentration. It's not a power. The ability to hit the ball a long way is for so many reasons. Like Cameron Champ is, half the size of Koepka and DeChambeau and hits it equally as far, or if not further. He's built like a jockey, Cameron Champ, and so it's not so much about the size. But I used to think in a game of concentration. A game of golf is 4 hours roughly in duration. If you have 75 shots, each swing's only a second, so there's a minute 15 of work out of 4 hours. So you've got this, you've got 3.25 hours, whatever hours, 59 minutes to to think good or bad things, one of those two, and so. One of the things with DeChambeau was the first thing that goes when you're physically fatigued is your concentration. So if you're going to play a game of 4 hours long and you're going to carry another 10 or 15 kilos in weight, you just go, and even though I was watching all this going on, it was about a year later and he went, oh, well, I made a mistake, And the other one that did it too was Jason Day. Jason Day, I think, came out in an article and said that he was... he got it wrong with the weights. He tried to do, go too strong and catch up. And so, what you've got to do is, I think, for those guys that are at a very pointy end of their sport, and they've just got to add things incrementally rather than, follow the trends and try and do things too quickly, I suppose. So, and I've caught them both out. So there you go.
It does, and that's a perfect segue to my next question. How... You heard, we saw Patrick Cripps a couple of years ago with David Teague. David Teague wanted to kind of talk about what you did, the Dustin Martin, become that burst player. He had the bull down part. He didn't have the burst player. And there was a real big article that Carlton did about him dropping a few kegs, a bit of muscle mass to become quicker. Now, I've watched Alex's development from baby junior, where he was like this marauding Rory Laird type halfback. Now he's like a little beefcake. When you look at Alex, he's built. He's no longer that kid he was. How hard is it to add these layers without taking away your natural point of difference, like pace, like strength?
Yeah. So ultimately, what you're dealing with, particularly with athletes, is just the relationship between power versus weight. So one of the things that, again, when I had a lot, during COVID, I had a lot of time to spend with Alex and teach him a lot of these things. And when Alex did his knee, Alex is incredibly powerful. And when he first did his knee, his body weight at that sort of 21 year of age mark was about 87, 88 kilo. And I told him, I can remember saying that one of the reasons why I've done this is just too heavy. You've got too much power for that level of body weight. So how about we get the weight down to about 83 kilo? And what if I told you you'd be more powerful at 83 than what you were? And it was sort of almost a bit of a hard sell. He didn't want to lose that strength and that power. Well, at 83, 84 kilo, he ended up actually lifting absolutely more than what he did than when he was the 87, 88, as he learnt sort of, got the years under his belt and got his really good sequencing up and all of those. But it's just time that goes into it. Now where he's at now is one of the reasons why he looks like a very physically strong player is he's now 27 years of age. So he's at that sort of that late 20s mark, and he can carry his body's strong enough to carry it. And the same with Cripps. When they're younger, they've got to lose. They've got to keep as light as they can for as long as they can until those muscles really develop and can carry it. And that's why you look at when you see sort of sides in a premiership window, they've got a whole lot of guys that are just they're very durable and very. I can remember one guy who I used to for Geelong, who I used to like in the early 2000s, was I always thought Joel Corey had this very prototype kind of physique. He was very sort of slender as a younger man, and it just looked like he added about 400 grams of muscle every year for about 10 years, to this point where he was, just played every week, didn't miss a game, never, his body could just take the collisions and bounce off them, and that's what you sort of don't see with the younger players. So when we're younger and our muscles aren't, but it's actually not the muscles, would you believe? It's the tendons that hold it all together that are the is this. And if you look at, this is another analogy I always use with people, is the bricky's forearm. So the bricky that just picks up 100 gram bricks time and time again for years on end, they end up with unbelievably strong wrists, forearms, and they can pick up 6 bricks in a hand and go, what's your problem? So and that's the same thing in football. It just takes time to really condition those tendons up and get them tough and strong, and that's one of the missing elements more so than the muscles. The muscles are just very much just a reflection of how durable and strong the tendons are. So, but it's time that needs to go into the tendons rather than the ligaments rather than the actual muscles. Yeah.
I think that's a great message, because I think that's one of the common misconceptions when you get like Ole Hollands, who like he's built in the nicest way possible. He's built like a child. When you look at him with your eyes, he looks every part 19 years old. And the common misconception in the media is, oh, he needs to put 10 kegs on. And like what you're saying is, if he puts 10 kegs on over a summer, potentially that could ruin his career. He could be injured forever. He needs to do it gradually. And you mentioned Nat Fife. I remember Nat Fife coming into the system, very similar to Ole Hollands. He was built like a child.
Yeah,
and
he was.
Then suddenly he's a big beefcake man at 25, 6 years after. It's all that gradual process, isn't it? Because that cements it.
And that's what they talk about a lot with development. That's why year to year you see players, you just see the strength just starts to come in over a couple of years. They start getting a few pre-seasons under their belt, and they just start looking a little fuller in the muscles, and and they sort of they might put on 1 or 2. We sort of naturally thicken as we get older a little bit. We get a little denser in our muscles, just in general anyway. But particularly at the start, the game's over 100 minutes long, and they're running 14:50. You think of a racehorse. A racehorse is 600 kilo. They've got a minute to do their sprint or whatever. If they get a half kilo too much, the trainer's screaming, blue murder. But so when it comes to an athlete that's say 80 kilos or 75 kilos, you can't just add 10 kilo to them. You've got to let their strength and particularly their aerobic system catch up to where they need to be. So. And that's one of the other ones is the aerobic system's just like it's just like a network of a tree. It's growing deeper and deeper into the muscles each year. So and that's why particularly a lot of the younger boys need to be managed, and they manage them on time. In the pre-season, they might get them back a little later. The older ones might come back a bit later. The younger ones don't do as much. They might be on reduced hours. They'd be on reduced probably weight training, and that's just all management. And so they can catch up very naturally over a longer period of time. The biggest thing is just not ruining them. You don't they're particularly your talent. You want it there. You want it there for the 8 years between sort of 22 or 23 to 32 or whatever, or 33 maybe now, and. You can really ruin them in that first 2, 3, 4 years. So they've got to proceed with caution there.
I love that, because I think that leads me on to the next one. I remember my pop, love him to pieces, but I used to get injured all the time, right? And I will hold my hand up. I am the most susceptible to an injury ever. And he always used to say to me I needed to stop being soft. But I remember when I started playing golf at elite level, I got a personal trainer, and they explained to me that every human being's different. Some people are just susceptible to soft tissue. And I remember being described it as it's allergies. Some people can eat eggs, some people can't. And then some people are indifferent to eggs. Now, how terminal is a soft tissue? So we see players, and it seems to be a misconception in Australia. In England, we're quite okay with some footballers just get injured all the time, and it's about managing that injury. In Australia, it seems to be like people can't get their head around. Some people's bodies are just naturally susceptible to breaking. So in your opinion, is a soft tissue? Because in the UK we call it an old man and a children's injury, because like you say, there's usually the middle age where they're okay.
Yeah, certainly. So what you've got to find is, and this comes back to one of our earlier discussions about finding your sweet spot. So let's say you're a footballer with a calf problem, and you're getting constant calf problems. Now, there might be, what you've got to do is eliminate all the variables possible, particularly, in high performance. You want to go, okay, am I doing it? Is my footwear right? Is my, am I recovering enough? Am I drinking enough water? Am I eating the right things? Okay, you've got all those things right. And then you go, okay, it might be even a mechanical issue. You might find someone's knee just points in a little bit more slightly inward, which puts stress on a calf. So if that's the case, we sort of don't know that unless we really profile someone. What you've got to do, what that athlete's got to do, is find what they can do to sort of their management area, and whether that means that they do certain exercises, they reduce their volumes, whatever it is. You've kind of got to find, if you have that one size fits all approach to it, the likelihood is the thing that's causing the thing that's causing their injury is exactly everything they're doing up to that point. So and quite often I used to find too with a lot of people, they just they may spend this thing where they're injured, they get themselves out of injury, they get back into their event, and then they get to a certain level and it's just back to the drawing board again, and it's just this constant vicious cycle. You've got to change something, and you've got to change the approach to it, and you've got to start looking at different things, and they're like footwear, like are they getting enough sleep? Are they, as I say, eating and drinking the right amount of things? If that's all the case, then you can just look at the training program, modify loads, modify even a change of position. You might find there a change of position, and even things that start really affecting. Really a lot of different things affect athletes. If you start having children, all of a sudden you're picking up a small child from away from your body for 28 times a week and instead of none, and then that starts to, you've got to think of all of those little things, what's different, and then you kind of find ways to work around. And that's what a good coach will do. A good coach should be able to get them to understand these sort of things and find what's altered in their in their sort of matrix of their week, and go, okay, since you've started doing that, this has started to occur. But when you've got recurring problems, you do it, you're either the volumes are either too high. Here's another good one. I can remember Andy Roddick won the US Open as a young player, and as he went on, he was sort of starting to drop out. He was only making quarterfinals and getting knocked out at the start of the second week of most tennis events. He got a new coach, and I can always remember reading this. The coach said to him, I want you to get your weight back down to, let's say, a round figure, 90 kilo. And he goes, I haven't been that weight since, 1998. And then he said, well, what happened then? And he goes, well, I won the US Open. And he went, well, there you go. It's the weight that's sort of putting the stress on the body, and it's every point of every minute of every second or whatever it is, and it eventually wears them down. So that's what you've got to find, that that really good weight that you're at, and and what's optimal for your high performance. But there are some people that just through mechanics or whatever, or technique or something they did as a child, might be a bit of scoliosis in the back, and when it gets to a really pointy level, they just sort of fall apart a little bit. They can constantly have issues, and that's just life, unfortunately. But
I can hold my hand up because it leads me on to my next point. Now, you nailed something there. Out of the gym, when I was playing, I was the worst. So I remember being taught, like, don't sit down for X amount of times. Make sure I'm drinking X amount of water per kgs that I weigh. And I'll be honest, as soon as I was out of sight, I'd have a cheeky beer, I'd have a kebab. And then my mindset was, I had a kebab last night, I'll go for a longer run, which put stress on my body because I broke the training program. So, and I remember my PT always saying, approach ailments like your dad, because your dad complains all the time, my back hurts. When you're young, you ignore it. So my question to you, how much onus as well, you could be the best S&C guy in the world, but would you say that a lot of the onus is on the player as well? Because you can't hold his hand in his life. He's got to be doing more off gym than he is in the gym.
That's one of the really, the onus always comes back to yourself, and who you choose to surround yourself with. And if you've got someone that you surround yourself with, it's trusted. You go, this guy just, he really speaks to me. I really can hear what's going on, or she, and it's just someone that's a real influence in your life. Those people, the thing that I always say is just remove agenda. Like, if you've got no agenda with the athlete, then the only interest you have, whether it's if you give them a clip over the ear or if you're giving them support, it's certainly just because that's what you feel they need and they trust you. But the onus always comes back to the athlete with how they, you can give people all the tools, all the information, but you're not their personal assistant. You're not there. You're not there to watch over everything they do. But if you explain things in good ways, like one of the really good ways, let's say something like alcohol. Like I use analogies to kind of teach a lot. Because people just go, "What's wrong with having a beer?" Well, there's nothing wrong with having a beer. And quite often it's good psychologically to feel like you've achieved something and to go out and enjoy yourself, But if you're a professional athlete, let's say you have 8 beers on a Saturday night. 8 beers on a Saturday night. You go, okay, how long's that getting out of before that's out of my system? And you go, okay, so the next day, let's say they've played a game, say on a Saturday. So they go out Saturday night. Their body's in recovery mode from the game. So they have 8 beers. That's, I think, without knowing exactly, it'll be about somewhere between 8 and 12 hours, depending on the size of the person and all of that. So 8 to 12 hours before that. Now, by then, you've had breakfast again and possibly the following. So now that's got to digest. So the body's got this real priority system of what it needs to do at any point in time. Now, the least priority it's got is recovering from your game on a Saturday. So one of the things about certainly recovery and all of that is giving the body as little to do as possible. So it's if it's got to break down alcohol over a certain period of time. So all of a sudden you go from that 8 to 12 hours, and then when you're supposed to be recovering, by the time you've actually then digested and then gotten to the next day, you're now back training again. If your body hasn't recovered by then, you're now compounding, the wear and tear of the weekend with now another training session. So you actually haven't got now if you compound that over a young man's life, 19 to 25, it may end up to something like 1 year behind in development, because you're choosing that path rather than something else. So So I just sort of put it down into sort of terms like that, which sort of gives people the option rather than telling them what to do, you know.
I might have won a major, Nick, if I knew you 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? But it is so hard, though. Like, I always say to people, it's so easy doing this job of talking about the players because and I think sometimes we forget we were 18 and 19. So, like,
Yeah,
I look back at what I did at 18, 19, and you just mentioned there, you've got a training session Saturday. I'd go out for a beer, and I used to have this belief: if I got up at 6, went for a run, and then went to the sauna, I'd sweat it out. I'd be fine, right?
yeah,
And I look back now and go, idiot. But it
yeah,
made so much sense. But you are human; you make mistakes, and it is really a sacrifice of your life being an elite sportsman, isn't it?
yeah,
You are sacrificing normal stuff to
yeah.
be an elite athlete.
Yeah, but like you say, you know, the one thing I'd sort of, you know, applaud you for there is endeavour. Like you obviously, you know, if that's what you felt like, you know, and you know, things are certainly a lot different now. You know, like the elites, you know, not that you know times and strengths have altered greatly, but certainly, you know, the talent pool and the amount of money involved has changed, which makes things more. Just gives a lot, you know, a lot more weight to things now. So, you know, recovery is more important and being at your best more often. So, if you actually look at athletics as a whole, the times of athletics, you know, particularly in Australian sport, with everything we know now, I mean, the times aren't, you know, dropping at exponential rate or anything like that. I think there's only in the last 20 or 30 years, there's only been five, maybe six Australian records broken with everything we know with the Institute of Sport and Nutrition. But what we're asking them now to do more is we're asking them to be at their higher level. Like, you know, in the old days, they might have, you know, had an Olympics every 4 years, a Commonwealth Games every second, world champs, this and that, and they just go to get fit for those events. Now, you know, with sponsors and money and all of this involved, and particularly with footballers, we're asking them to be at their best a lot more often than what they were in the past. And so, you know, someone that might have just run the Olympics or, you know, a day later they might be, or a week later they might be in Dubai you know, on behalf of Nike doing, and, you know, can you just go and run sub 10 seconds for the, you know, for all the, you know, for all the financiers here for us, you know, and that's what it's asking you to do a lot more of. So it's sort of, you know, but just having good endeavour back, you know, probably when you were, you know, doing sport, it would have gotten you a long way anyway. You know, just a good mindset of just being, this is what I've got to do, and having a good passion about it and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, look, don't you know, don't sort of beat yourself too much up about it.
I don't. I mean, I was lucky. I was like you. I fell in love with helping people. So
Yeah,
even though I wanted to be a major winner, when I fell into teaching people my game,
yeah,
I got a bigger kick probably than playing. But I mean, it's easy to say when you haven't won a major. I'm sure holding the US Open, I'd change my mind. But
yeah,
what interests me there, Nick, is when you're training as well, like when you are an elite athlete or you're a regular Joe, we see a lot of injuries from professionals where it sounds like Jacob Wheatering's a good example where he had his early injury this year where he was really honest and I really enjoyed it. Him saying he felt it go in training, but he carried on training because
yeah,
the pressure of making the team and just trying to get it. How
yeah.
important is it that athletes and humans listen to their body? Because I think sometimes we get the impression that someone like yourself, a strength and conditioning expert, just knows by looking at us. We've got to tell you.
Well, I'll tell you right now. I mean, I do it. I make mistakes with myself still. So, you know, because endeavour's one thing. So one of the things, look, a good coaching and good coaches should always protect the athlete from themselves first, because particularly when you're wired a certain way, you do want to get out there and you just want to, you know, you don't want to show people you're injured, and you want to show that you're just 100. You know, you'll play through pain and adversity. So, one of the things, and I think it's really difficult in the modern AFL game is, there's sort of what they call the medical department or the high performance department. You've got a doctor saying have 3 months off for an injury, say that needs 3 months. Then you've got the physio going 3 months, and then just give it another couple of weeks, and then and then you've got the strength and conditioning guy going, well, here's what we can do during that time. We'll get you back into training as soon. And then you've got the coach going, I want him tomorrow. So, it takes a pretty special guy to liaise all of those guys together and get them to get on the same page to go, okay, what's best for the athlete now? What's best for the club now? What's best for the next 3 months going forward? What's best for, where are we now? Who are we playing in the next 3 or 4 weeks? Whatever it is. And so that's where it's but the player, like in anyone that's become they're just competitive. They just want to get out there. And that's what I'll give you another great, one of my favorite examples of, how difficult coaching an athlete is and protecting them from themselves. I think it was 2004 Athens Olympics, and Grant Hackett was he was the out and out favourite to win the 1500 freestyle, and they were doing a training session in the lead up to that, and the world record was on the line, and it was his own world record. I think he'd already beaten Perkins' record at that time, which I think he did in Tokyo. And so get to Athens, and I think he swam something like 14:31 for the 1500, and Cottrell believed he could go 14:20, and he was watching him do a session in the pool, and he knew what his speed ratings were, and he's looking at this guy doing repeat hundreds, I think it was, and he goes, this guy's going to break 14:20. This is just absolutely. Now he's now presented with the decision here. Do I pull him out of the water now? Is he peaking right now, or has he got more to give? And we can set a world record for the ages. Well, he left him in the pool, and I don't know whether you probably may not remember, but Hackett won in about, I think he swam 14:48 or 14:51. Absolutely, he had a chest infection, and he won by about an arm length over, I think, a South Korean swimmer. And and it was one of those times where if you were the coach, you'd look back and you go, I knew that I needed to pull him out of the pool, but I just, I was witnessing history, and sometimes you see that with really good athletes too. It's just keeping below that really peak line, and then that little tip over the edge just gets them going the other way. And there's a real art form to coaching, and a lot of it is certainly a really great relationship between the people around you and the athlete. Is just and being able to be truthful to the right people and know what's best for that person, and just completely and utterly removing agendas. So
they are different animals. I had a coffee with a player this year, and he had a hammy. Had a hammy, and I remember having this coffee and thinking, he was telling me that he's playing this weekend, and honestly, the way he was walking, if I would have remortgaged my house and put it all on you ain't playing Saturday, pal. But I never forget, he ordered this coffee, and he was asking what was in the ingredients of another drink. And I was watching this, and I kind of laughed to myself, thinking that the levels this gentleman's going to make sure he can play Saturday is insane. And then he was telling me about his next 3 days. And lo and behold, I switched the TV on, and he's lining up Saturday, busting ass, breaking lines. And I was like, insane, because he knew his body. He knew his body, and he said, I needed to rest today. But it's insane, isn't it? Because these guys are different animals. Like I always say, Cripps would probably line up in a grand final with a broken spine. They want to play. It's your job, though, isn't it, to pull them back?
Yeah, and work out what's better. I can remember. Hammies and soft tissue can be a funny one. You can, if the hammy's got a tear in it, you're not running. you're out. But what can happen with a hammy is what's called a neural hammy, which means you've got something else that's trapping the nerve that's feeding the hammy, and so what it sort of presents more is a toothache. But if you tear something, you're just not you're not doing. But one of the great things about sport is the amount what adrenaline can also do. You can have a broken rib or something, and I sort of I remember when Petrarca did that. I think now 5 weeks ago or something. Someone said, how wouldn't he have known? And I thought to myself, well, during the quarter, the tear may have been minuscule. We don't know, but his body would have been just incredibly hot, and adrenaline's pumping, and then the tear starts to, as he's moving more, the tear starts to increase, and then by the time he cools down at half time, it's sort of like, okay, can we give him a jab? So I sort of gave them, I sort of watched how they handled that, and I thought to myself, well, Petrarca, there was no way unless they had a scan to know what was going on at the time, but it obviously just got worse and worse and worse. But adrenaline's a very powerful hormone that'll just that'll block a lot of block a lot of things in the body. So that's why you see guys from the past playing with broken ribs, and or I had a broken back, but quite often they don't know until afterwards because they just can't feel it. So, but certainly soft tissue. You tear a calf, you tear a hammy. You're not running, or you're not. You're not moving too well. So you've just got to. That's where you just got to let the natural course, take its place. So, but there's always examples. Yeah.
No, I love it, and yeah, how hard? There is a difference, isn't there? A distinct difference between fitness and match fitness. So we hear this a lot in AFL. Someone's done his preseason, but the coach will come out and say he's not match fit. Can you just maybe explain what is the difference between fitness, match fitness?
Yeah. Okay. So look, fitness is. I always think of fitness as more of a blueprint. You know when you're at the right weight. Your running times. You've gone from the back of the group in your first or second season. You're now, I've really moved up to the front now. I'm improving my fitness in the weight room. Everything's going up. That's but one of the principles of exercise is the principle of specificity, and so the way to get good at football is to obviously play football. And so what they'll do is there's no boundaries in a game as to what can happen. In one game you might run 10K, the next game you might run 15K and have to do 60 sprints, and the next time it's 9K and 12 sprints, and just depending on your role or what they're asking you to do. Now the GPS systems have gotten fantastic at, they've got unbelievable data now where they can monitor all that stuff and train them accordingly. But so what happens is you're getting fit toward, and the other thing is, your recovery kicks in as well. Like when you start getting knocks, probably, particularly when you first start, it's that thing where you just sort of, you start to learn to recover a little bit better. You start to know what, makes you tick a little bit more through the week, and eating and drinking the right things. But fitness is just a basis so that you can play the game at the best of your ability. But the specificity of the game week in, week out. So one thing that you see them here is that you'll hear quite often is they begin to get very specific towards the back end of the season after they've done their pre-season and everything. You quite often hear the coaches might pick up their volumes a little bit, towards the latter, particularly if they're playing finals, and they can quite often have some unusual results, where bottom teams beat finals-based teams, due to those sort of, it might be due to a little bit of that and a little bit of psychology, I don't want to get injured before a final kind of thing. And but the reality is you lose specific fitness as your match fitness goes up. So what you want them to do is just sort of, it just needs a little re-kick, it doesn't take long, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks max or something, and they just and then they back it off again, and so that they get to the start line with as healthy a body as possible, rather than going in or quite battered, or so so that's a bit of an art. How long out do you do that for? And someone that you've really got to know. You've got to know your team. You've got to know your age profiles. You've got to have those conversations as to. But always the way to know whether you're detraining or is performance. Performance tells you everything. If you're as fit as hell and you're not running out games, there's something wrong. And the same with fitness. If you do the same thing too often, you start to hit this sort of ceiling effect, and you start to actually, your fitness starts to go backwards. So you're always looking to re-stimulate and reinvigorate the athlete with different things and different adaptive kind of processes. So, but through the year of football, the biggest thing is recovery. There's the game of football now. 10 to 15k, just wear and tear, the twisting and the shearing forces that they put on their knees and things. They're sore for a long period after a game, so that recovery is just absolutely paramount.
It's fascinating because I think we do forget, don't we? They are human beings, and humans aren't textbook. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Every human is different, and that's why that's so fascinating to me. That I do think we all fall sometimes for one size fits all, and there's 40 people, so that means probably 40 different biologies at play at any one time, and you're trying to manage it so they're all kind of the same. It's incredibly hard.
Yeah, it's like no different to a government's just got a basic set of parameters for the entire nation, and we try and fit in and find out. And a football team, you've got to have sort of a set of basic ground rules that, they do attend training at this, and this, and do this X amount of, sponsorship stuff and this amount of community service and whatever it is. But it's, there's a parameter as to what it means to be a footballer. The ones who, kind of excel, they sort of, and, what was Nathan Buckley, 20 years ago, he was almost teased for his level of application and dedication to what he was doing, is now kind of the norm if you want to make a career out of playing football. So there's a lot more Nathan Buckley sort of type of mindsets in the AFL now. The trick is to sort of, and it's one of the other really important things about being an elite sports person, is to not forget a bit of welfare and a bit of happiness as well, and to realise that it's not just this stressful grind in week out, and everyone's watching me, and and people don't understand what I'm doing and whatnot, and you've got to have you've got to sort of find a little bit of time for a little bit of a life as well, and that's where some sort of get it, some get it. That balance really nice, whether it's just through good friends or having their family around, or taking vacations and just being able to relax. And some people are just eating football or sport or athletics 24/7. So certainly you've got to find what makes some people like a bit more work, some people feel they need to work in the off season equally as hard as what they do, and it's really funny when you listen to sports and coaches. Even I don't follow horse racing at all, but sometimes you listen to you might hear a trainer throw away a throwaway line about a horse. This one likes working, this one likes just running all day every day, and this one just likes to sit in the paddock and come out for one run and then they put it back in, and and that's what a good trainer will do, or a good coach will do, is they just find what the ones that need a bit more work, the ones, let them work a bit more, and and then every now and again you get a Dennis Rodman that comes along and you go, well, go and have a week in Vegas if that's what gets the best out of you, So it's just being able to break the rules and know when to do it and when not to, and that's and that's why it's if it was all just linear, it'd be as boring as batshit, no doubt about that.
Mate, it would do like golf. We talked about grips off camera, and it's one of the most fascinating things. If you ever go and you want to be really nerdy, just check Golf Pro's grips. You will not see anything more sparse than how you actually hold the golf club. But your first rule is a neutral grip. Like everyone is taught it. We all get taught the same grip. So it's crazy how it changes with human to human.
Yeah, that is one of And look, I'm someone playing golf. I always struggled with the grip, and it's one of the first things I always look at when I'm sort of, if I'm playing with someone. I always notice, this guy's got a really classic kind of grip, and if someone tends to grip it a bit strong, I go, oh, this guy's going to need a little bit of timing, or this guy's going to need a few perfect conditions to get it going. But it's amazing what marries the golf face up with through that motion, and it's just finding what it is for you that creates your best game. And it's no different to anything. It's no different to just high performance in any facet. Some people just you think about music even, and some people can sit in a room all day and play scales till their fingers bleed, and other guys just pick up a guitar and love playing in front of people and playing a few chords here and there. It's just there's no rules. But I've always thought, particularly with Australian people just absolutely love people that do fuck all and achieve like no tomorrow. Like it's one of our, this guy, he drinks beer and he's still the best ever, and we kind of we tend to denigrate guys that just absolutely work their butts off, and and maybe not achieve as high, but it just it's fascinating what makes one person better. A lot of it's luck, a lot of it's sociological upbringings and all this sort of stuff. It's just you just got to take your opportunities when they're there, and that's all you can do.
As a POM, I often tell this story to my kids that the reason I didn't make it as a golfer is my idol growing up was Shane Warne. And I used to find it fascinating that all the English players were fit and posh private school boys, but this bleached-haired, chubby, beer-drinking, dart-smoking boy could destroy our team. And as a kid, I found that exactly like you say. I found it fascinating because I was like, Shane Warne's never seen a gym unless there's a bar attached to it. But he is so incredibly better than everyone else.
Yeah. He look, and he was born with a wrist that could just do something that no other people's wrists could do, and then the other thing was what kind of really made him the perfect storm of a champion. He just hadn't. Some people, you talk about fitness, and we talk about, some people just love being in the cauldron of 100,000 people, and some people, no matter how technically gifted or how hard they train, they just standing in the middle of a ground is the worst place on earth for them. So certainly for Shane Warne, that was the place he wanted. He just wanted to be there, and that's what's fascinating now about about sport is some people just that's the psychology of it. You can just imagine the nerves on the start line of a 100-meter final, or the start, the first tee of a major, or no matter how good you are, you've got to be able to handle all those things. And and the game's played until it's over, and some people just handle it all the way through, and just others don't. But it doesn't mean they're any less gifted. It just means that one gift that they may have is that the absolute want to be out there and performing, and to show people what they can do. And you see that time and time again. So.
Mate, Nick, I have learned so much from this chat, and I'm sure everyone watching has learned a lot as well, because it is such a complex thing. Nick, before I let you go, do you want to give your business a plug if people are you're in the Geelong West area, aren't they? If they want to get fit and become a sportsman.
Yeah, look, I operate pretty under the radar. I've got a small gym here. It's called Power Fitness. It's I've been going for about 27 years now. But look, I've got an amazing client list, and I always welcome new people. I sort of don't go out of my way to bring too many into it, but because I try and keep it pretty private, and I just sort of like to go about my day as simply as possible. But certainly, as I say, we always welcome new people, but it's a pretty modest little business, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, if you are in the Geelong West area, please look Nick up so he can help you be the best fit version of yourself. But Nick, mate, I thank you very much for your love and support. We chat off camera as well. You're a great guy, and thank you for joining us today. It really helps educate the masses on things we don't know.
Oh, I hope you got something out of it, and I hope the listeners got something out of it. And it's been an absolute pleasure to finally talk to you face to face. Anyway,
cheers, mate. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella